Hello, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to a Working Class Power Hour podcast. This is episode 4. I'm honored to be joined by my co-host, Eric Basir from Chicago ATU Local 308. He's an executive board member there in Chicago. They actually have an executive board meeting tonight, which we'll talk about later. Um, so we wanted to start off today's podcast with a short interview, well, relatively short, about half an hour interview, with two activists and worker leaders within the Amazon Labor Union's Democratic Reform Caucus, Sultana Hossain and Connor Spence. So I'm gonna share my screen and start that video. After the video, we'll talk more about what's been going on in the fight of Amazon workers against billionaire bastard Jeff Bezos, and just in general about some of the themes that are discussed in the interview. So let me just share my screen here. Okay. Okay, here we go. This is a working class power hour interview. My name is John Ferretti of the Local 100 Fight Back Coalition here in New York City. Um, I'm a former executive board member of TWU Local 100, the New York City Subway and Bus Workers Union. Uh,
Looks like we lost the audio or it froze.
showing me.
All right, I hear you now.
All right, yeah, but it's not showing me. Hold on. Stop cam. My camera went blank. All right, I'm gonna try to restart the video from the beginning and see if you can hear it. Can you let me know if you hear it when I put it on? Okay.
Yes.
We apologize for the technical difficulties. Sorry about that. This is a working class power hour interview. My name
Sounds
is John
good.
Moretti of the Local 100 Fight Back Coalition here in New York City. I'm a former executive board member of TWU Local 100, the New York City Subway and Bus Workers Union. And we're honored to be joined today by Connor Spence of the Amazon Labor Union Democratic
You
Reform
got an
Caucus,
echo.
and Sultana Hossain, also from the Amazon Labor Union Democratic Reform Caucus. And we're honored to be able to share their experiences and learn from their experiences in building a union that is taking on the behemoth of the global capitalist economy, Amazon, run by Jeff Bezos, and they've been involved in a long struggle for union members, the members who founded that union, to have a voice in actually forcing Amazon to come to the bargaining table and forcing them to concede to the demands of the workers who make it all run. So, Connor, I just want to open the floor for you to begin to introduce yourself and tell us in brief, like what your experience has been. What do you do at Amazon? How did you get involved? That kind of thing. So, Connor, you gotta take yourself off mute.
So I can mute yourself.
Yes, I will.
Hi, my name's Connor. I'm, like John said, I'm a member of the Amazon Labor Union Democratic Reform Caucus. I've been an Amazon worker since 2017, and I'm one of the original founding organizers of ALU. We started the campaign in April of 2021. I was one of the first officers of the union. And, you know, I've been involved in this fight to take on Amazon for a long time, try to get better working conditions in the warehouse and improve the conditions of Amazon workers nationally and internationally. I'm also involved pretty heavily with the reform effort that's going on after our win in 2022. Our union kind of struggled to make progress. We had a lot of momentum, then we lost a lot of momentum. We won the JFK campaign, but then we subsequently didn't win any other campaigns. And there's a lot of challenges that we face in organizing Amazon. It's definitely a David and Goliath battle. And so, you know, we formed our caucus when we took the position that there were a lot of flaws in the union strategy and its structure and the way that leadership was approaching things. And, you know, the big news recently is that we just had a referendum that was presented to the workers in JFK 8, whether or not we should have leadership elections in our union. And the vote was majority yes. And so now Sultana and I are both involved in the work of pushing our reform platform and then getting the union back on track so we can pressure Amazon to the table and get a strong contract.
Okay, thank you, Connor, for giving some of the background. Sultana, if you can just introduce yourself and tell us how you became involved in this union organizing struggle in the first place, and specifically the Democratic Reform Caucus.
Hi, so my name is Sultana Hossain. I started working at Amazon at JFK 8 in 2020, around when the pandemic started. I was working as a learning trainer for the last 3 years that I worked at Amazon. I was terminated in August 2023. and currently have a ULP case against Amazon for my termination. I became involved with ALU around the time that the caucus was formed. I had been around during the whole the campaign to get certified, the NLRB vote, but I refrained from getting too involved in the organizing until this caucus was formed. The basis of the caucus is union democracy, which is really important to me, and it's something that I saw was lacking in the ALU prior to this caucus being formed. So as soon as I joined the caucus, kind of hit the ground running, became heavily involved in the organizing. But yeah, everything that Connor said, we are going to be having elections very soon. This is something that we have been fighting for over a year now. We had a referendum last week, and the workers of JFK 8, the members of ALU, voted to have e-board elections. So that is slated to happen in June of this year.
And so the elections that'll happen, that will determine all the leadership of the ALU, correct? And also determine what your constitution will look like, what your founding documents will look like. Is that correct?
So this election is for the 4 e-board positions: president, vice president, recording secretary, and treasurer. And part of the referendum is establishing a constitutional committee of workers to update and amend our current union constitution. And the plan is to expand the board beyond the 4 positions that we currently have.
Okay, and the importance of union democracy, like a lot of people think union democracy is it's a good idea, it's a noble cause, but they don't understand why it's important on a concrete basis, in terms of that all of your building and your organizing will not have any direction unless it's directed by members. In other words, that politically and organizationally, members need to be in charge of the message. They need to be driving that message. They need to be deciding what the course of the struggle is, especially when you're facing an enemy like Amazon that's armed to the teeth with billions of dollars to engage in scorched earth union busting campaigns. So like, when we want to build new unions, we want to build unions that actually are representative of members and are driven by members. So it's a practical matter. It's not just it's a practical and a political matter. It's not just a moralistic thing of this is the way things should be. It's about this is the only way that works. And so if you guys can speak about that, whoever wants to go first, just let me know.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's we have to explain this to people a lot, that when you're promoting union democracy, it's not just a lofty ideal that you just use to feel better than other people. It's really the only way to achieve the level of organization necessary to put pressure on a company like Amazon. There's no such thing as a strong, undemocratic union. We need to organize on a level that would allow us to basically do like large scale collective action in JFK, in our warehouse, and in other warehouses as well. And the only way you're going to get people behind that idea is if they are in the driver's seat around the planning of the collective action, voting to commence the collective action, voting when it ends. And then when we're putting our demands together, like the demands have to resonate with the workers who are participating. So they have to be surveyed and democratically voted on. So it has to be democracy from start to finish.
Sultana, if you'd like to speak on that question.
Just as you said, John, and just as Connor has said, union democracy is absolutely a necessity to actually successfully bring a company like Amazon to the table. And union democracy, it's beyond just giving. Unions exist to give workers a say in their job conditions and in their labor, and beyond protecting things like civil liberties like free speech, free assembly, due process, all of these things. Union democracy is necessary to prevent internal corruption within a union as well. And so on both sides, it's very important to create that kind of force that's necessary to take on a company like Amazon.
Yeah, and also like in an era of Trump, like and rising fascism, like one of the things that is seductive about it is that it supposedly is fighting corruption, it supposedly is draining the swamp, and it's important for working class organizations to model behavior that we want workers to follow, and to give them an alternative way that society can be, and you can't do that unless we clean house within our own organizations and have them stand up as models of how things could be different. So we face that in our own union. We have a union that is perfectly okay with apartheid union leadership. It's perfectly okay with 16% of the members voting to keep an administration in power, which it brings shame to the working class. Instead of giving us pride in our own institutions, instead of giving members a stake in believing in the whole cause of unionism. So we've been very inspired by the struggle of Amazon workers because you guys are basically building it from the ground up, and that's why we were there. When you had your May Day rally, when you did the COVID walkout and all of that, and that inspiration has to be maintained. It can't just have an inspiring start and not achieve any gains, not achieve lasting change, because otherwise it leads to people giving into demoralization and cynicism, which is the prevailing working class consciousness at this time. So I know that you guys struggle to try to build that hope, and part of it is this fight for democracy in the union. So I also wanted to talk about, like, how do you do political education to keep workers' morale up? How do you politically educate them, not just about their own struggle, but about the connections between their struggle and other workers' struggles? Part of the way your struggle started was by showing the commonality that we all faced during COVID, and how we were abandoned and left to die by the capitalist bosses in the wake of this epidemic, the pandemic. And so how do you do that? How do you model that for workers in terms of political education to keep them mobilized and to keep them on task in the direction of that we all want to go? So I'll mute myself. Connor, if you want to speak on that.
Yeah, and I think Sultana could probably say a lot about this too. I'll just briefly say that, it absolutely does start with this basic fundamental of organizing, which is identifying issues that resonate with workers in the workplace, and then making the connection to, well, why does that issue even exist, and why can't it be fixed? Why can't it be addressed? And typically it's, the answer is always that management doesn't want to address it because management is concerned about control and they're concerned about profits. And so from there, you kind of sow the seeds to expanding somebody's consciousness around basically class struggle politics. And then once you do that, I think it opens up a lot of doors to then talk about the other areas in our society where those relationships and those contradictions exist. And it exists a lot in politics and foreign policy and things like that. So I think it's just starting there and then developing a robust political organization, a political education program within the union, which unfortunately ALU doesn't have yet. We would like very much to develop it. But then you can start introducing workers to these other topics and helping them come to the same conclusions that we all come to in our politics.
So just to add on to that, like Connor said, working class politics is the cornerstone of our organizing. And I think in having these daily conversations with workers who face things like houselessness and food scarcity and other forms of systematic violence, you know, we have to draw the connections to your labor that you're giving to Amazon and the enormous profits that the company is making, and you get little to nothing out of it. And it's continually having these conversations and really relating to people on a human level, you know, that the struggles that we all face. And yeah, just social justice has always been a big part of our unionism and our activism. And it's about growing that collective power that we have. You know, it's just we need to get organized. We have to be organized, and there's power in people, and that it always comes down to that, reminding people who work at JFK8 who are fearful of retaliation every day. It's our biggest struggle, is confronting confronting people's fear of retaliation, of losing their jobs that they depend on so much, that they need. That there's power in us coming together, and and we need to just reclaim it, and we need to fight together.
Yeah, I think also like part of trade unionism and part of what's been lost in the trade union movement is that it's not just about wages, hours, and job conditions. It's not just about narrow concerns of a certain section of workers. It's also about the fact that none of us are free if we're not all free. Like if we don't have that as the thing that grounds us, we're not going to be able to fight sexism in the workplace. We're not going to be able to fight homophobia in the workplace. We're not going to be able to fight racism in the workplace. And most importantly, we're not going to be able to fight the divide and conquer that the bosses constantly use to pit us against each other and have us slitting each other's throats over the crumbs from the boss's table. And also, like, in a case of fighting a Goliath like Amazon, a lot of what you have to do is political outreach to communities, to show to the people who use Amazon, to other workers, and the conditions they face that are largely conditioned by having such a behemoth company like Amazon corner the market, how much they raise prices and immiserate us all because of their control. So you have to, in order to win that kind of battle, you have to put out an alternative message that actually inspires other workers to see that you're not just fighting for yourself, but that you're fighting for them. And that's really where the hope is that when people begin to see unions as real living things, that real living institutions that are built by workers to provide, to change the balance of forces and make it a fair fight, that's when they'll have buy-in in the idea of a union. Now, we've seen the opinion of American workers has gone way up in terms of their support for a union, but yet joining those unions has not necessarily happened. That next step of actually getting involved. Although you see UAW leading a strike that was successful, the number of strikes is really not where it should be, and given the popularity of unionism. And so that's a big struggle that we face, bridging the gap between support for a union and actually getting members involved in that. I'll let you guys speak about that, about those wider questions, like how do you counter message to Amazon effectively, and how do you get workers to buy in that they need to take that next step, that it's not just verbal support but it's action. I'll leave it there. Connor, you want to speak, or Sultana? Connor, go ahead.
Yeah, so it all goes back to the fundamentals of organizing, which is having one-on-one conversations with workers and identifying what issues resonate with them. And once you've identified a worker's issue, you can really open the door to having a lot of conversations that create that buy-in. It's good that you mentioned going on strike, because our position is that A strike is absolutely necessary at Amazon if we want to bring them to the table, create the kind of pressure that we need to create in order to force concessions from the company. And it has to happen really not just at JFK, but on a national scale. And that is just an insane level of organizing that we have to take on. And it's going to require an insane level of buy-in and a vision that really resonates with all of these workers who are involved. And we have to find demands that resonate with Amazon workers on a national level. Basically, it's stuff that really resonates with working class people and help them understand like the situation we're in, where it's like we're all struggling to pay our rent, and we all are struggling to afford groceries, and we all are just completely overworked, and we work these 10 to 12-hour shifts in the warehouse and get 15-minute breaks. And it's like these are things that we don't actually have to become comfortable with. It's like stuff that we can fight back over. And so it's a large campaign around agitating around these issues, and then presenting a credible plan to address those issues through collective action, through creating a worker organization that takes on the company. And it just happens one conversation at a time, basically. But if you have the right strategy, you can get the job done.
And an important part of our messaging as the caucus is that like the union is owned collectively by all the workers. So the work that you put in is what we get out. If we all put work in, then we get more out of it. And so part of our organizing is letting people know, like, you own this, that you are a part of this. It's not just representative of your needs. You have to be involved in the fight. And like you said earlier, John, none of us are free until all of us are free. So a lot of our organizing centers around who is the most exploited workers at JFK 8, talking to them about their needs, and really centering our demands on the people who are struggling the most. And that's important to us.
And that has really been missing from the labor movement for a long time. That we're supposed to represent the interest of all workers, and specifically the most oppressed, the people who are doubly and triply and God knows how many times exploited and discriminated against. That a union is supposed to be a tribune of the people. It's supposed to actually represent raising those voices to the forefront, and not allowing the bosses to keep them in the shadows. And so also, I think that it's important that, Sultana, you've been involved in building a New York City Palestine labor group that just was formed last night, actually. But the fact that you're at the forefront of that work too means that workers can count on you in more than one struggle. They can count on you to be there and to be vocal in all of those struggles. And I think that we have to start thinking about, like, where our not in your case, but in other unions' cases, union pension funds being invested in Israeli apartheid and genocide. And all of this, every budget is a moral document, right? When a union says it's okay to invest your pensions in exploiting other people, it undermines everything the union supposedly stands for. And it's it's important that you guys see that as your role, see that as not separate at all from the fight that you're leading at JFK and Amazon overall. And also, like, I wanted to also have you speak about the work that's going on in the South, related in Kentucky in particular, related to Amazon labor union, and why that's so important, because it's a linchpin of anti-union control and union busting and the demoralization that workers across the country feel in terms of the possibility of forming unions in the South. So, if Sultana, if you could talk about the Palestine work first, and then Connor, if you can pick up on that question of organizing in the South and why it's so important. So, Sultana, you can go first.
Okay. So, like I said, bringing in social justice issues is really important in our union, and Palestine is definitely at the forefront of everyone's mind right now. And there's an understanding as a unionist, as someone in the working class, that unless we build up a kind of revolutionary labor front to demand liberation and actually shut it down for Palestine, that language is union language. Shut it down, you know? So we're not there yet. We're organizing to get there, and it's important that we stay committed to doing this work. My background is actually like women's studies. Like I've been involved in like reproductive justice work for a very long time. So ALU, specifically our Reform Caucus, our demands for our collective actions have, we had a walkout in October where one of our demands was that Amazon stop breaking laws around pregnancy accommodations, and which is something they do constantly. One of our demands for our December walkout was that Amazon divest from funding Israel with billions of dollars. So we're aligned with the No Tech for Apartheid campaign. So it's important to us, beyond the bread and butter issues of higher pay, better working conditions. It's important that we look at the bigger picture as well and make these part of our demands.
Okay, Connor.
Yeah, so we there is a campaign of Amazon workers organizing in Kentucky, specifically at an air hub called KCVG at the Northern Kentucky Cincinnati Airport. And Kentucky, as we know, is a right-to-work state. It can be very hostile to organizing. Amazon already is very hostile to the organizing efforts going on there. They actually gave final written warnings to 11 of their organizers at the same time, just for tabling outside the entrance of the building, trying to give out pamphlets. They fired a lead organizer in retaliation because he's one of the people who started the campaign, and his case is going before the board. But it is like obviously important that when we're taking on Amazon, like we can't just focus on New York, where there's a lot of pro-union sentiment. Obviously at JFK, we benefited from having a lot of pro-union sentiment, and there's a ton of workers in the warehouse who maybe they haven't been in unions before, but their family members have. They have relatives who probably talk pretty highly about the quality of life they have from being in a union. But, you know, in order for us to have enough leverage in JFK alone, we probably don't have enough. And so we need to set our sights on a national campaign and look at where the choke points in the Amazon network are. And so you're going to find that these choke points exist in places like Kentucky. This air hub is like a $1 billion air hub. Jeff Bezos cut the ribbon himself. It was a huge investment for Amazon to save a lot of money. And so worker action there is going to have like a huge impact on putting pressure on the company and getting demands that the workers are fighting for. And we're gonna run into these struggles of like, yes, of course, it's going to be more difficult in Kentucky. People are more primed to be anti-union, but at the end of the day, the one fundamental rule of organizing exists no matter where you go, and that's that there are issues in the workplace that the company just will refuse to address. And once you have a conversation with a worker and get them to acknowledge that, then it's a short jump in logic to, okay, well, how do we make the company address that? And that's through coming together, acting collectively, putting pressure on them. At the end of the day, we're the ones who make the company rich. So we should really be calling the shots as to, you know, how much of the fair share of our wealth we get back in various ways.
Okay, I'd like to thank you so much, you guys, for sharing your time. I know that you guys have very busy schedules, and Sultana especially, because she's multitasking. But in any case, it's inspiring to get to hear from workers who are rediscovering the idea that it's it's only us that can save us. Like, we're the only rescue that we need, and that we have to count on our own ability to organize and inflict our will upon the bosses, and force them to do things they don't want to do. It's a breath of fresh air in the union movement, quite frankly, because the majority of unionism that we know in the supposedly organized sectors of the working class have already given up any idea that they can convince the bosses to do anything, and they end up becoming the best representatives of boss logic in our own institutions, and that undermines people's confidence. So I'm hoping that Amazon workers and a lot of new unions that are being formed will be a breath of fresh air to begin to re-educate workers of these essential facts, that there's only one way to build, there's only one way to organize, and there's only one class that can lead society, and it's the class that produces everything. It's the class that makes it all run. And so I thank you so much for your time, and please let us know how we can provide solidarity to you, whether it's fundraising to support your struggles or to support struggles in Kentucky, or however, whatever actions you have upcoming. We want to be involved in all of that to whatever degree we can, and we want to inspire other workers and use our platform to get them involved as well. If you guys would like to, wrap up and have any last words, let me know here. Connor,
Yeah, I'll just say, definitely please support the campaign that's going on in Kentucky. It's a really important fight. As far as how to support ALU or specifically the Reform Caucus going forward, I say just follow us on social media. There will be news that comes out that will talk more about how to support what we're doing. But I think generally just keep your eyes on the developments around Amazon organizing, and if we launch a really robust, coordinated effort to force Amazon to the table, ideally we want to do it later this year. That will involve a significant portion of community support. And so you can follow ALU social media and go on our website, sign up for our mailing list, and then just generally keep an eye on what we're up to.
Thank you, John, for having us on. I think this was a really important conversation to be had. So thank you for having us.
Okay, and thank you for sharing your experiences. And we all learn from each other's struggles. Nobody does this alone. Nobody has all the answers, but we have to inspire each other through trying and building the basic building blocks of what a different world can look like. And I thank you so much for sharing your experiences, solidarity, and you all know how to reach us. And let us know how we can help you. And we already know you'll have our back. So we never. We have your information, so we'll throw out the bat signal if we need help. Actually, one thing you can be involved in right now is transit workers are leading rank and file led rallies and marches against assaults that they face on the job. I don't know if you'd heard, but a conductor was recently slashed on the train on the midnights, and another conductor was hit in the head with a glass bottle. And part of that has to do with the overall collapse in society that we all face, and the lack of social planning, the lack of intervention in the kind of crises that we all face. So we'll be reaching out to you about how you can help us with that as well. And there's a very big link between the MTA and your union specifically, because you all ride our buses to head out to JFK 8 and other places. So we're all facing the same conditions in that way. And so if we're going to ride the same bus, we should ride the same struggle train. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great night.
Yeah, it was a great interview. So let's see. I think that when we listen to what other workers in the other industries have to say, we're going to find that we have a lot in common. And I mean, we work in public transportation, and John's in New York, I'm in Chicago. But what's going on, right? when you pay attention, you see we share the same struggles. Now look at what's going on with the Amazon workers. They talk about union democracy, right? And in the Chicago Transit Justice Coalition, and now as a executive board member, I've been participating in this kind of discussion. And when you hear other workers talking about the same thing in their unions, like the Amazon Labor Union, they just won recognition. So what's going on? Why this issue of union democracy? Because that's the important part of making a union strong. Making sure that the members of the union have a say. We're always trying to do better. And when you look at the Amazon Labor Union Constitution, it's not very democratic. And when you look at the ATU Constitution, it's much more democratic than the ALU. And when you compare that to the Transit Workers Union, Transportation Workers Union, TWU, you're going to see differences in that too. So we learn about this by listening to each other. She talked about the sister that was on here, that and the brother that was on there. They were saying members must be involved from start to finish. And that's what I've been trying to say to our executive board at ATU 308. Okay, like Mark, Vice President Weems you got an idea, to try to resolve this issue of our members being assaulted by people who have nothing to lose on the trains and the buses. Ask the members what they think of that idea. Because I brought up, well, we need to have 2-person crews like we used to. Got 8 cars, 6 cars. It's madness out there. He said, well, I don't want any members getting hurt. I said, okay, well, then isolate the motor cab. But here's the thing. When I talk to members, I bring it up to them. They like 2-person crews. Vice President was saying he want to have somebody in a control center watching video. But the management's going to use that video to watch us, to try to write us up. Why not have more uniformed employees? Because you know what? If you got 1-person train operation, the operators at the head car, they could still get slashed. They could still get hit on the head. In fact, it happens. I know an operator at the head car, opening the doors, looking, and some woman spat at her. Like, it was real nasty. Like, she was being assaulted. It wasn't that she was provoking nothing. That's like, this person's was out of their mind. They just want to hit that person and spat at them. Like, it was really bad.
Eric.
So, oh yeah, I got you, John.
Yeah, just to let you know.
I wrap it up.
No, go ahead.
I just wrap up my analysis though. My point is, the members have to be involved, and that's what the sister was saying just now, from start to finish in everything we do.
Okay, Eric, just to let you know, I'm having some technical difficulties with my camera. It's only showing the green screen. It's only showing the picture. So just so you're aware. Yeah, it was great to meet these activists, worker activists within the Amazon Democratic Reform Caucus. It's the first time I actually met Connor. I had been working with Sultana in labor for Palestine work here in New York City, and forming a section of Labor for Palestine, so the national movement. And it's sometimes it's kind of by chance you meet people to connect in that kind of discussion, and it was good to learn from their experiences. We had also planned to discuss some wider political questions, and we have a short video. I don't know if people have watched the Republican response to Biden's State of the Union speech. Biden's State of the Union speech was trash. But if you watched the Republican response to Biden's speech, you would have seen an episode of Scary Movie for White Christian Conservatives. And it was a very kind of dark, very manipulative performance by Katie Britt, who's a senator from Mississippi. And there was a reporter that did a deep dive into some of the accusations that she made in that video. And one of the accusations was that, Biden is, there's a migrant invasion and Biden is letting millions of people over the border. And she goes into this dark story of, basically a woman that was gang raped supposedly by traffickers. It turns out the story is completely false, and I'm gonna play the video so that you can get an idea of how strange this story was and how twisted it was in order to push for a certain narrative. So I'm gonna share my screen and put up that video. It's a short video, and then we'll get to discuss more about it. Here it is.
You have no doubt seen this woman on your For You page at various points today. That is Senator Katie Britt, the junior senator from the state of Alabama, who delivered the Republican response to Joe Biden's State of the Union last night. It was weird, but the part that was the weirdest for me, the part that was the most off, was this.
When I took office, I took a different approach. I traveled to the Del Rio sector of Texas. That's where I spoke to a woman who shared her story with me. She had been sex trafficked by the cartels starting at the age of 12.
So I immediately had questions. Who was this woman? How did she meet her? How did she get her to tell her this story? Also, she seems to be describing something that had happened over the process of years. She said that it started when this woman was 12, and she says that she's a woman now, so it seems that some time has passed. How much of this happened on the border? What country did it happen in? Did it happen before Joe Biden was president? Senator Britt, right after that, stated pretty directly what side of the border it happened on, or at least she implies it very strongly.
And we wouldn't be okay with this happening in a third world country. This is the United States of America.
All right, so there's the answer. It happened in the United States. Or did it? So I looked a little bit to see if I could figure out what Senator Britt was talking about here. And I found it pretty easily. Senator Britt has told the story over and over and over again since going on this trip. So all I had to do was look for details of the trip, see if there was any information about who she talked to, and if there was any more information about this case there. And I think I found it pretty easily. So in January 2023, Senator Britt, who had just become the junior senator from Alabama, traveled to southern Texas to the Del Rio district near the border of Mexico with two other Republican senators, Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee and Cindy Hyde-Smith of Mississippi. And Senator Blackburn had all of the information about it on her website, her senatorial website. During this trip, among other scheduled visits, the senators had what they describe as a round table, although you can see it's not a round table, it's a long table on which they are sitting on one side of it. It's a press conference. They were there with a Fox News contributor, Sarah Carter, who often does sort of the xenophobic anti-immigration coverage, as well as a Mexican congresswoman who's become an anti-human trafficking activist, as well as this woman, who the senators identify as Carla Jacinto Romero. All I had to do was click on Carla Jacinto Romero's name, that hyperlink, on Senator Blackburn's page, and it took me to this. This is Carla Jacinto Romero's testimony to Congress from 2015 about her experiences in Mexico. And if you scroll down, you see it took place between 2004 and 2008. Now, I don't know what they put in the textbooks in Alabama these days, but Joe Biden wasn't the president of the United States in 2004 or 2008. He wasn't even vice president of the United States. That wouldn't happen until 2009. In 2004 and 2008, the president of the United States was George W. Bush. Vice president was Dick Cheney. And none of that really matters here because these events didn't happen in the United States. These crimes didn't take place in the United States or even near the border. They took place in Mexico, in Guadalajara, in Mexico City, and other parts of Mexico. Does U.S. policy have a huge role to play in the Mexican drug wars? Do Mexican drug cartels get their weapons from the United States? Do they get most of the money that they make selling and transiting drugs to the United States? Absolutely. But this didn't happen when Joe Biden was president. It happened 20 years ago when George W. Bush, a Republican, was president. And Jacinto Romero didn't share her story with Senator Britt. Britt tells it like she's like sitting by the banks of the Rio Grande, like holding her hand, like getting her to tell her the story that she won't tell anyone else. I mean, that's sort of the affect that you get watching that video, right? This is a professional activist. I mean, I'm sure she went through the things that she went through. I'm not discounting that at all. And she's clearly a very brave person who has overcome a lot in her life. But she tells the story in public. This is her testifying in front of Congress in 2015, 9 years ago, almost a decade ago. This is what she does. She goes around and tells people this story. And she did it for the senators in January 2023. And yet this senator has gone around repeatedly for the past year and change, telling the story over and over again as if this woman had confided something in her, and as if she was describing actions that had taken place on or even near the U.S.-Mexico border during Joe Biden's presidency. I don't even know what to say except that is just fundamentally dishonest. It goes beyond misleading. She said it in the piece of the video that you saw before. She says, we wouldn't accept these things if they happened in a third world country. Well, they did. Mexico is definitionally a third world country because it wasn't aligned directly with the Soviet Union or the United States. And it is also colloquially a third world country in the sense that it is a non-English speaking country of the global South that is more poor than the United States on average, although it is actually better off than a lot of other countries, even Latin America. But that's neither here nor there. It didn't happen in the United States. It's not an example of something that happened recently, or it's not even an example of something that happened on the border, and there's certainly not something that happened under Joe Biden. So why would she share that story? It seems very clear to me that what she's trying to do is she's trying to create an association in people's minds between Joe Biden, the border, Mexicans, Latin, people of Latin descent, something like that, and sexual violence. That's what she's going for. And she's doing it on the basis of what you can only say is just an out and out lie. She knows that this woman, she knows when this woman's experiences happen because this woman has talked about them repeatedly. I'm sure she talked about them and gave very specific indications of when it happened at that press conference that she was at in Del Rio. It must have been very obvious to her at the very least that she wasn't talking to somebody who had recently been 12 years old. After I watched this, I looked up her spokesperson, which is never easy to find these days, but I found an email address for him. I sent him an email. I asked him for comment, if he could explain what the senator meant, if there was some other incident that she was talking about that I hadn't found. They haven't gotten back to me. If they do, I will update then. But for now...
Okay, we're going to stop sharing the video now. That's a good enough idea of what happened. Eric, you still there? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So, we want to try to focus on local issues and trade union issues, but also focus on wider political questions. And I thought this short video gave us a quick opportunity to talk about some of the narrative that's being built by careerists, strivers, to gaslight the American public over very real issues that have very real solutions. But of course, they're not interested in any of those solutions. They're looking to weaponize an issue. And the Republican Party has chosen overwhelmingly not to be for any solutions, but to use it as a campaign issue. And we've spoken in a previous podcast about how, isn't it amazing that every 2 years there's a crisis on the border? Just when it's time for election, it's time to recycle the same old racist tropes to manufacture a crisis on the border. And they've manufactured it by funding, because they've not funded immigration judges to actually process these legal immigrants. These are not illegal immigrants. People applying for asylum have a legal claim to apply for U.S. citizenship. They're not being given an opportunity to have their cases even heard. And Joe Biden has been very much a part of that, using COVID this Article 42 as which Trump invented, as a way to wholesale deny these people's rights to apply for asylum in the United States. So Eric, I'm going to open the floor if you want to, put forward your comments on this topic.
Well, yeah, this is a common thing. Oop, you might have to mute me or mute your speaker.
I think I got to mute my speaker. Hold on a second.
Your speaker, maybe, yeah. Yeah, I think that did it. Yep. Right. So just like these politicians, and I gotta say though, I can't stand any of them, but they use these topics just like our unionist leadership. Instead of focusing and taking responsibility for doing what they're sworn to do, which is to help organize us so that we can use our collective power to stop the same old problems. They say, oh, there's this problem. We're gonna need this. We're gonna need that. It's a knee-jerk reaction to everything. We have the same write-ups. The people are being fired for the same stuff where we work at the CTA, at the MTA, and it's always the same thing: is people being sick, people being hurt, vindictive management, FMLA. Discrimination, and we'll just grieve it. We'll just grieve it. Yeah, the arbitrator will get it this, and the arbitrator will do that, and you'll get your job back in 6 months to 3 years. But what about organizing us to just punch this mismanagement in the proverbial nose? No, we can't do that. We have to establish good relationships. The politicians talk the same way. These assaults. Oh, they say, oh, these migrants. The migrants are taking our jobs. The migrants are causing crime. Well, we all know these are refugees from wars that the United States government has waged on countries for various reasons, mostly to steal natural resources and give them to the corporate benefactors that keep the politicians in office. So here, the union leadership, and we did have that video. I think we're running out of time, but you did have that video of one of our ATU presidents, Keith Hill, and he's saying, yeah, it's good to have the National Guard, and we're gonna have the National Guard in Chicago, and then we searching bags just like in New York, Yeah, that's going to work. It won't even last. And it feels good. I have to admit, I see security often when I see security in the stations and the terminals, I actually, feel a little safer. It's the truth. I'm going to tell you what I think. But I know that's not the solution, though, to the problem. And we don't all know what the solution is. And the solution is to eliminate crime by eliminating poverty. Because if you don't have poverty, you don't have people committing these kinds of crimes, right? But no one talks about, here's the crime that no one seems to talk about, and that is wage theft. Wage theft. So we don't have a contract right now in Chicago, you know that, right? So we have clerks, we have people who do office work that are in our union who work 24 hours, right? They work the 24-hour schedule. They different shifts, right? Different shifts, midnight shifts and whatnot. So as per our contract, anyone who works in the evenings and in the overnights, they get what's called a nighttime premium, except our clerks, except the clerks. And the CTA's been getting away with this for years and years and years, just stealing money, always robbing us of our contractual rights. I know the same thing's happening in your cities. And where's the union leadership about that?
Yeah,
I'll end it up because I know we gotta wrap it up.
we got to wrap soon. Yeah. Okay, finish. You done? Okay. Yeah, in New York, the CTAs are at the bottom of the pay scale here. They don't have any civil service status. So we're facing much the same kind of disrespect, especially for the most oppressed workers with the most oppressive conditions. And now they've sharpened up their knives for station agents. They've done so by closing booths, kicking them out of the booths, setting them up to be targets for assault on the platform. And the video you're talking about, yeah, unfortunately I didn't have it, but I'll share it in the comments. It shows the similarities between New York and Chicago business unionist leaders, which is nothing but calling for more repression, violent pro-police solutions for everything, as opposed to actually championing our communities and advocating for the needs of those communities and the proven solutions that we know work. Nobody's saying that somebody who's violent, that there doesn't need to be an emergency response to violent people who are anti-socially violent and completely out of control. Obviously, when it's an emergency like that, there needs to be some crisis intervention, and that person needs to be separated from society. But we have to start solving these problems long before it gets to that stage. And part of that is a union that advocates for the needs of the working class and actually listens to medical professionals, listens to scientists, listens to people who have years and years of experiences of actually intervening in these kind of crisis situations. It's just like the border. It's not that there aren't solutions for these problems. It's not that there isn't places for these people to live. It's not that there's not enough money to fund the services that they need. It's that there's no interest in solving this problem because this problem is a weapon for them. And union leaders that go along with all this tough on crime policing and all of this repression as the only solution are actually taking us back to a time before the George Floyd protests, a time before all of the massive step forwards we've taken in terms of actually challenging institutionalized racism and challenging the carceral state and challenging institutionalized racism, and us going back and having amnesia about the struggles that we've been involved in leading to make real change is not going to solve any of those problems. It's actually going to make them worse. And we know this. We know, for example, that immigrants are much less likely to engage in acts of crime on an overall scale across the population. It's because they're not looking to draw attention to themselves. They're not looking to draw, the potential of them being deported. These are real statistics. I didn't make the studies. These are scientific studies about what the likelihood and the percentage of those committing crime are. Facts are facts. There is no hashtag fake news. It's a con job. And the people who are putting that forward, they don't care about your anxiety. They don't care about the violence that we face. They don't care about social disorder. In fact, social disorder is good for them. They stoke social disorder and resentment and anger and violence and racism as a way to burn it all down, as a way to weaponize and give them the power to push their advantage as a class, to push the advantage of the ruling class, to roll back benefits, to roll back civil rights, to roll back rights for gays and lesbians, rights for women, etc. So, we always need to fact check the stimulus that we're getting. There's a constant drumbeat, a constant anti-working class racist narrative being pushed at us. And it's our job to protect ourselves from that kind of programming, that kind of propaganda, because it ultimately is very bad for us and very bad for our class. I just wanted to say we're so sorry for the technical difficulties. We're going to share a video, a downloaded video of the whole interview that we did with the Amazon Labor Union Democratic Reform Caucus, so that members, if they're unable to follow within the live stream or online, will be able to watch it, in its entirety. And we look forward to continuing these discussions with you. We look forward to your comments. As I said in the interview, we don't have all the answers, but we have to begin to try to work on coming up with those answers collectively through our own struggles. Eric, I see you had your hand raised, so go ahead.
Yeah, we're wrapping up. Before we go, I have a very, very important announcement. It's right along the lines of why we need union democracy and to focus on our issues that, especially in our locals. So Local 308 tonight, we're having a membership meeting. And it is actually more important than last month's meeting where members showed up, y'all showed up, and you told my fellow union officials, no, you're not getting rid of Eric Basir. So y'all kept me in office. But this meeting is even more important. Vice President Weems has put 11 bylaw changes up to be voted on. This is a lot. Most of them, half of them are garbage. Half of them are just little tweaks that really won't make much of a difference either way, but go ahead. The ones that are garbage have to do with officer salaries. We're talking about full-time officer salaries, part-time officer salaries like me, expense accounts, everything. This is strictly the domain of the membership to lower or raise. What he is doing is setting it up so that all the officers will have the full-time officers will have permanent 6-digit salaries. Okay? Permanent. And for officers like me, it's going to give us a 10% raise. We don't need a raise. We don't need any more raise. We don't need more money when we're doing union business. All we need is our lost wages for our picked job. Okay? That's all we need. But anyways, that's not the point. The local can't afford it. As you know, we barely have $200,000 every month in the bank. We cannot afford this. The members need to show up and vote this crap down. Tell Mark Weems, Penny McCoach, focus on our contract and our terrible working conditions and help us fight like a real union and stop distracting us and trying to take money from us. Thank you.
Okay, Eric, sounds like an important meeting tonight, and we strongly encourage members who can get out there to these meetings, because they count on the fact that members have busy schedules and maybe don't know about it, or don't understand the importance of it, and they want to do this like a thief in the night, and we can't allow that to happen. So in any case, we just want to wrap up at this point. We're going to be picking up the discussion next week, Tuesday, 1 p.m. Hopefully we'll have all of these technical difficulties resolved by then. We apologize for any clunkiness in the podcast this week, but we'll have to have that corrected very shortly. We'd like to thank everybody for your time and for your solidarity and your openness to hear other workers' stories, because it's very important that we begin to stop listening to the drumbeat of ruling class, hateful, anti-worker narratives and begin to have our ears open and our eyes open about what other workers are going through, because ultimately that's the only way we see our strength and our power, and it's the only way we begin to see the potential of collective solutions to all of these struggles, instead of demoralization and cynicism and hopelessness. It's the struggle that gives us hope. It's our collective power that gives us hope and strength, and it's the only way we can chart a course for a better world. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. Have a great night. Solidarity to everyone, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you. Sorry, just trying to end the stream here. There we go.